He sold HBO a story he had not finished, and it made them billions. Welcome to the Founder Files, Beyond the Brand. Today we are going behind the throne, behind the dragons, the blood, the betrayal, and the billion-dollar empire that almost collapsed under the weight of its own unfinished ending. Game of Thrones is one of the most profitable entertainment franchises in television history. It also triggered one of the most spectacular fan revolts ever recorded. And the man who created it? He still has not finished the books. This is the story of how an unfinished fantasy novel became a global empire, and the very real human cost of what happens when art gets swallowed by business. To understand what Game of Thrones became, you have to understand what it was before any of it existed on screen. George R.R. Martin published A Game of Thrones in 1996. It was dense, political, brutal, and completely unlike anything else in fantasy publishing at the time. Characters you loved died without warning. There were no clean heroes, and the world Martin built, Westeros, felt less like a fairy tale and more like a war document. The series was called A Song of Ice and Fire, and it was planned as a 7-book saga. By 2006, Martin had published 4 of those books. The 5th, A Dance with Dragons, arrived in 2011 after a 6-year wait. 2 more books remained unwritten. That detail will matter enormously, because in 2007, while Martin was still writing, HBO came knocking. Showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss had optioned the rights to Martin's books and pitched the series to HBO. The network greenlit it, and production began. On April 17, 2011, Game of Thrones premiered. The first season budget was modest by later standards, but the ambition was anything but. Critics praised it. Audiences grew fast. By season 2, it was not just a hit, it was a phenomenon. HBO was not in the business of making television at this scale. They were in the business of prestige. Game of Thrones gave them both. Subscription numbers climbed, international licensing deals multiplied, physical media sales poured in. Season 1 alone would eventually generate an estimated $115 million in domestic video sales. The machine was just getting started. The numbers that followed are staggering. Over its 8-season run from 2011 to 2019, HBO spent an estimated $1.46 billion producing Game of Thrones. Season 8 alone cost approximately $15 million per episode. That is more than many feature films. But the return on that investment was extraordinary. Analyst estimates, not officially confirmed by HBO, suggest the show generated roughly $3.1 billion in subscription revenue alone during its run. Total franchise value estimates climb as high as $6 billion when you factor in licensing, merchandise, international deals, and media rights. Physical media across all seasons has generated over $466 million in domestic video sales. And those are the numbers people will actually discuss publicly. The real figures are almost certainly higher. George R.R. Martin was not just a source material provider. He was a partner, writing episodes, consulting on production, and watching his world come to life in ways no book could replicate. And for the first 5 seasons, the adaptation held close to the novels. The story had a roadmap. Then something happened that nobody had fully planned for. The show caught up to the books. By season 6, Benioff and Weiss had outrun every page Martin had written. They were now writing the ending of a story the author himself had not finished. Martin had given them his broad outline for where the saga was headed. But the specific choices, the pacing, the character arcs, all of that now belonged entirely to the showrunners. And the cracks, though invisible to most viewers at the time, were already forming. Season 8 arrived in April of 2019. It was the most anticipated television event in years. The finale, which aired on May 19, 2019, drew 19.3 million viewers across all HBO platforms, an all-time record for the network at that moment. By any conventional metric, it was a triumph. And then, the internet ignited. Fans were furious. Character arcs felt rushed. Beloved storylines were compressed into 6 episodes that critics and audiences felt should have been 12 or more. A petition titled Remake Game of Thrones Season 8 with competent writers began circulating online. It did not quietly fade. By September of 2019, it had accumulated 1.73 million signatures. 1.73 million people publicly demanded that a globally beloved, record-breaking television finale be thrown out and redone. That had never happened at that scale before. Here is the paradox that defines this entire story. The same season that triggered a mass fan revolt also broke HBO's own viewership record. The machine had become bigger than the art. So big, in fact, that even the show's mistakes had become global news. In Season 8, Episode 4, a coffee cup was visible on a table in a scene at Winterfell. It was never confirmed to be a Starbucks cup. But CNBC estimated that the resulting media frenzy generated approximately $2.3 billion in free advertising value for Starbucks. $2.3 billion from a prop team mistake. That is how embedded Game of Thrones had become in the cultural operating system of the entire planet. The backlash was real. The damage to the brand was real. But the cultural gravity of the franchise was so immense that even a scandal generated more earned media than most companies see in a decade. Behind the spectacle, the relationship between George R.R. Martin and the franchise built on his work was becoming increasingly strained. Martin had signed a 5-year, 8-figure deal with HBO in 2021, running through at least 2026. On paper, he remained central to the Westeros universe. In reality, something had fractured. In January of 2026, Martin sat down with The Hollywood Reporter and described his relationship with House of the Dragon showrunner Ryan Condal as, in his own word, abysmal. That same month, it was reported that Martin had told HBO executives on a Zoom call, and this is a direct quote, "This is not my story any longer." That sentence could have come from the show itself, a creator watching his own creation move beyond his reach. Condal, for his part, confirmed shortly after that he would exit as showrunner following Season 4. The kingdom had a succession crisis of its own. And then there is the book, The Winds of Winter, the 6th installment of A Song of Ice and Fire, the novel that was supposed to come next. Martin first began publicly discussing the book in the early 2010s. As of 2026, it has been nearly 20 years since readers first heard it was coming. In April of 2026, publisher Bantam Books officially debunked rumors of a 2026 release. It is not coming this year. When it will come, nobody outside of Martin's study can say. And here is the question that haunts everything. Does it even matter anymore? HBO turned an unfinished book series into a multi-billion-dollar franchise. The show wrote its own ending. Spin-offs are already running. A theatrical film is confirmed. The world of Westeros has moved on, with or without its creator's final chapters. HBO's response to the Season 8 fallout was not panic. It was strategy. Methodical, patient, and timed with remarkable precision. House of the Dragon, set roughly 200 years before Game of Thrones, premiered in 2022 to massive audiences. Season 1 episodes now average 92.2 million lifetime viewers each, according to Warner Bros. Discovery data. Then came A Night of the Seven Kingdoms in early 2026. HBO described it as the third biggest series debut in the history of HBO Max, averaging nearly 13 million viewers per episode. And on June 21st, 2026, House of the Dragon Season 3 premiered to 21.5 million global viewers in its first 3 days. Numbers down 8% from Season 2's 23.4 million, partly due to FIFA World Cup competition. But by any standard, enormous. The franchise had not just survived, it had been resurrected. The 15-year anniversary of Game of Thrones was celebrated in April of 2026. Warner Bros. Home Entertainment confirmed a 15th anniversary 4K UHD limited edition collector set, releasing November 3rd, 2026, featuring 15 hours of additional content. A live stage play titled The Mad King debuted in Stratford-upon-Avon, with certain dates already sold out. And at CinemaCon 2026, a theatrical film, Game of Thrones, Aegon's Conquest, was officially confirmed, slated for release in 2027 and beyond. Think about what that list represents. a streaming spin-off, a second streaming spin-off, a theatrical film, a stage play, an anniversary collector's set, all launching within months of each other. This was not organic growth. This was franchise architecture, executed at the highest level. HBO did not just save Game of Thrones. They rebuilt it into something larger than the original show ever was. George R.R. Martin's estimated net worth stands at approximately $120 million as of 2025, according to published estimates. That figure is not a verified financial disclosure, but it reflects the reality of what his creation generated. A man who spent decades writing dense, uncommercial fantasy novels, who never finished his series on schedule, who watched his story outrun his own pen, is worth 9 figures because a television network turned his unfinished world into a franchise bigger than most film studios. There is a version of this story where Martin is the villain, the writer who sold his world and then lost control of it. There is another version where he is the visionary, the author who built something so rich, so layered and so alive that it kept growing even after his own chapters ran dry. Both versions are probably true. That is what makes it a real story. So what is the actual lesson inside this empire? It is not just about Game of Thrones. It is about what happens when a piece of art becomes an asset, when a story becomes a supply chain. HBO spent $1.46 billion producing the show. They reportedly earned $3.1 billion in subscriptions alone, with total franchise estimates as high as $6 billion. Those are analyst approximations, not official disclosures. But even the conservative version of this math is staggering. The franchise outlived the source material, outlived the original creative team, and outlived the backlash that was supposed to kill it. The Season 8 petition got 1.73 million signatures. House of the Dragon Season 3 just drew 21.5 million viewers. The fans who said they were done came back. They always come back. Because the world George R.R. Martin built, for all its fractures, for all its feuds, for all its unfinished pages, is just that good. That is the Game of Thrones story, not the one they show you on the red carpet. The real one. The messy, complicated, billion-dollar story of a creator, a corporation, an unfinished manuscript, and a fandom that could not quit, even when it wanted to. If this episode hit different, subscribe to the Founder Files right now. Every story we tell goes deeper than the headline. And leave a comment below. We want to know. Do you think George R.R. Martin will ever finish The Winds of Winter? And does it even matter at this point? Drop your answer below. More empires, more untold stories, coming soon. We will see you next time on the Founder Files.